Welcome back. Well, there's nothing like a good book for sitting around the pool or the beach. Joining us this morning with some hot summer reads is Greg Wilhelm, the executive director of the City Lit Project. Nice to see you.
Good morning, Lisa.
All right, let's get right to it because you've got a bunch of good books to suggest. The first one you have on your list is Hot Springs.
Coincidentally enough, Hot Springs by Towson University professor Jeff Becker. He is a highly acclaimed writer, and the book was received a starred review from Publishers Weekly. This is the story of a birth mother who goes back to Colorado, kidnaps her daughter, and returns her cross country to Baltimore, and then is pursued by the adoptive mother. And it really is an interesting look at the relationship between these two women and a lot of other really interesting character development. It's a short novel and perfect for summer reading.
That's not his first.
No, it's not. But he teaches at Towson. We've got a lot of great writers here in Baltimore.
Okay, and the next one is called Henry Walters and Bernard Berenson.
Right, this is your nonfiction selection. This is, of course, Henry Walters opened the Walters Art Museum in 1909, and it was called the Great Temple of Art in America. But at the time, collecting Italian art and being assured of the artist was authentic and that the dealer was being fair, you really needed to have an expert review your collection. So that's when Bernard Berenson contacted Henry Walters and wanted to sort of give his stamp of approval to this collection. It was really this relationship, this dynamic relationship between these two men that put the Walters Art Museum on the map on both sides of the Atlantic.
Oh, that should be an interesting read. Okay. City Stages.
City Sages.
Oh, City Sages. Okay.
It's a collection of Baltimore writers who've at one time lived in Baltimore or still live in Baltimore. So you have everybody from F. Scott Fitzgerald and of course Edgar Allan Poe to Ann Tyler and Laura Lippman. And this is the first collection of Baltimore-based writers that has ever been published, and it just received a Best of Baltimore from Baltimore Magazine.
Oh, very good. Okay, that's something that gives more local flavor. Finney, there was a blurb about that in the paper earlier this week.
Yeah, Finney is also a starred publication that got a starred reviewed from Publishers Weekly. It's by Justin Cramen, who happens to be a Park School graduate, lives in Philadelphia now. And it's a coming-of-age story about a young girl named Finney. And what's unusual about this is that he really does a good job of tackling some sort of typical coming-of-age things, you know, feeling a fish out of water, trouble with parents, running away, big city escapes, but he does it with not being sentimental and not falling into some of the cliches that we're familiar with. So that's a really good coming of age. Yeah, I think young people are like that reading as well.
All right, and then you have News Stories from the South?
Yeah, News Stories from the South, 2010 is the 25th edition of a great collection that comes out every year, published by Algonquin Books, one of my favorite publishers. This has been edited in the past by Baltimore writers such as Madison Smart Bell, Ann Tyler. It's edited this year by Amy Hempel, who is a fantastic short story writer. So what you have here is, you know, Baltimore's often called the northernmost southern city. It's hot out. These are short stories set in the South by really great southern writers.
Speaking of the South, I mean, that's the end of your list, but there's some really hot books. Everywhere I go, people are still reading The Help. Yeah. And it's based in a southern story from the 60s. And what are you hearing about it?
Well, I mean, it's on the bestseller list, so obviously it's gotten great reviews. Things like Stieg Larsson's series, the woman with the dragon tattoo, they're still hot too. So
you
great
can't
beach
find that anywhere.
I know.
That book isn't. I mean,
it's you can't. I was just talking. There's a list of 200 people who's reserved it at the library.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
All right.
Good stuff. Fun reading this summer.
Look forward. What are you reading now?
I'm reading a Confederacy of Dunces, which is a classic, and I read it every summer.
All right. And I just finished a book called A Reliable Wife. It's really great.
Awesome.
All right.
Good for you.
Thank you. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
It is time for you to get out your pen or pencil and piece of paper because we have a list for you of great summer reads. Greg Wilhelm is here with his recommendations. Greg's the director of the City Lit Project. Hey, good morning.
Good morning, Kate.
I just was asking him how many questions can I ask you about each book, so I can really make sure I get. But I already made the list. I'm always looking for a great recommendation, and you know, you go to Amazon and people say what they want, but when somebody you know and trust gives a recommendation, I always find that it generally works out. So let's start with Lisa Unger and Fragile. Start the novel.
Viewers might recall Lisa Unger's best-selling book, Beautiful Lies. And she's back now with Fragile. This follows a psychologist who returns to her quaint hometown just out of New York City, where she's going to raise her family, but then a teenage friend of her son disappears. Then there become eerie parallels between this disappearance and an abduction that happened when the protagonist was a teen. And so her powers of intuition, her historical memory of the town. This is a town where everybody knows each other and everybody looks after each other's kids.
A lot like Baltimore.
A lot like Baltimore. Her powers of intuition get her into some trouble and some deep water as she pursues the case. And it really boils down to an examination of what people will do to protect those who they love. So it's another thriller. It's a page turner.
Okay, I was going to say, is it more of a thriller or like a personality study?
Like a psychological thriller.
Ooh.
Yeah.
All right. Another novel of intrigue is Dan Fesperman's new book.
Right. Dan was a longtime foreign correspondent for the Baltimore Sun, so he takes his knowledge from being overseas, and he's now a critically acclaimed writer of thrillers. His latest book, Layover in Dubai, follows a corporate auditor, which admittedly doesn't sound like the most thrilling kind of protagonist. He knows he's going to be held over in a layover in Dubai, so he decides to have a sort of night on the town. You know, Dubai is the playground for the rich and famous on the Persian Gulf. During this evening, his colleague is murdered, so then he is sort of thrust into a series of events. Exploring the case, he gets mixed up with mobsters, gets mixed up with the politics of the area, and falls in with this smuggler turned detective, and the duo then sort of drill into the case, but then it's really an examination of the changes that have happened in Dubai over the years as it's become this sort of man-made paradise on the Gulf.
So it's more than just a snack. It has a little more meat to it.
Oh, totally. And what Fesperman does so well is takes ordinary people and puts them in extraordinary circumstances, and it's really sharp here.
Okay, let's go to a voice I never tire of listening to, Frank DeFord. It's a novel, you say, Bliss Remembered?
Yes, Bliss Remembered. Frank DeFord, of course, is a native Baltimorean, and he's more well known as a commentator for Sports Illustrated and National Public Radio. Bliss Remembered is the story of a swimmer who is at the 1936 Olympics in Berlin. She unexpectedly falls in love with a German, but of course the politics of the time separate the two. She returns to the United States, mends her broken heart, falls in love and marries. But then the husband is shipped off to the Pacific, and lo and behold, the German shows up on her doorstep one day. So she's really torn between her husband who's fighting the war in the Pacific, her unexpected love from the 1936 Olympics, and it's just a really, really interesting exploration of, you know, what would you do?
And only Frank DeFord could weave a love story, historical, and sports into a novel that I'm assuming is good to read.
Yeah, and a few people realize he has a second career as a novelist.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, now to a memoir, Rosanne Cash. Composed, good title. Rosanne
Cash's memoir just came out this week. Of course, it's a wonderful constructed memoir of her own career as a musician, but of course she was born into celebrity, so you have that as well. It's really an interesting look at her coming into herself as a writer. It's a really carefully constructive, intensely reflective examination of her writing art. What's interesting is that Rosanne Cash will be hosting the this year's National Book Foundation's 5 Under 35. 5 Under 35 is an annual event that recognizes emerging voices of American literature. One of the 5 Under 35 last year was Josh Wheel, and Josh Wheel happens to be the writer-in-residence at Gilman School. So I recommend to celebrate that accomplishment of his, pick up his collection of novellas, and that's titled The New Valley, and those stories are set near his birthplace in Virginia. Sort of stark and haunting stories about isolation, love, and it's just a really beautiful collection of novellas.
All right, well, I've got the list. I'm going to the beach in a week, and I'll be taking them with me.
Enjoy.
Thank you so much, Greg. We appreciate your time. And don't know what you're doing next Saturday morning, but for all of you Laura Lippman fans, and we know there are a lot of them on the show here, the Baltimore writer is out with a new book. She will be here next Sunday morning to tell us all about it. So don't go away and make sure you watch.
Right.
Greg, thank you.
Well, the Baltimore Book Festival is next weekend, and joining me now is the Executive Director of the City Lit Project, Greg Wilhelm.
Good morning.
Nice to see you.
Nice seeing you, Lisa.
Big weekend for you.
Big weekend. It's fall time. That means the big Baltimore Book Festival is next weekend in Mount Vernon.
Right. It starts Friday.
Starts Friday.
All right, so what's going on Friday?
Well, let's start at noon. The fair opens up at noon on Friday, so we try to capture that lunchtime crowd. So what better way to do that than with food?
Right.
So Lucy Snodgrass, the author of a brand new book called Dishing Up Maryland, will be there with John Shields, of course, the owner of Gertrude's and the author of Coastal Cooking with John Shields, talking all about kinds of Maryland food, with a particular emphasis on sustainable agriculture and cooking and local produce.
All right, that's really interesting for especially for all the foodies out there. All right, and anything else on Friday you can tell us about?
Yeah, all day Friday there's stuff going on up until the evening. There's City Lit Project will have a happy hour at 5:30 at the City Lit stage. A lot of fun music and entertainment Friday night.
All right, Saturday, what do you have?
Saturday, let's start off at 2:30 at the Literary Salon on Saturday with The Other Wes Moore. That's probably a book that people are familiar with. There are two kids that grew up in Baltimore, both by the name of Wes Moore. One went on to be the first ever African-American student to be a Rhodes Scholar from Hopkins, and the other is serving a life term in prison. So the book explores why did that happen, why did some kids succeed and some kids don't. And he'll be talking with City Paper contributor Lionel Foster.
All right, that should be really interesting if you've ever heard him give a talk. He's really fascinating.
He's amazing. He's a dynamic man.
Exactly. Okay, Saturday, a whole lot of stuff's going on.
Well, just because the Harry Potter phenomena is done doesn't mean that the interest in mythology and magic is at an all-time high. So there are 3 authors at the children's bookstore stage. Nancy Springer, the author of Enola Holmes, which is a series of books following the sister of the famous Sherlock Holmes detective. Esther Frisner, the author of Sphinx Queen, and that's a series of books featuring Cleopatra. And Kathleen Dewey, Skin Hunger, A Resurrection of Magic, the first in a Resurrection of Magic trilogy that won the National Book Award finalist last year. So there's, you know, kids still love the mythology, and magic.
Exactly. Okay.
Then at 6:30 on Saturday at the City Lit stage, a program called Eat, Think, Write. Vegan authors discuss their inspiration, featuring Ben Shaberman, the author of the Vegan Monologues, Tracy McWhirter, By Any Greens Necessary, and Jonathan Balcom, Second Nature, The Inner Lives of Animals. This will be hosted by David Breyer, all about sort of the vegan movement and sort of what inspires people who decide to live the vegan life.
Okay, they're not just talking, are they going to do any demonstrations?
Yeah, there should be some food and demonstrations there as well.
Okay, and then what do we have?
Then come back on Sunday, and the fair is open from 12 to 7 on Sunday. And I think one of the highlights of Sunday is 5:30 at the Literary Salon. Holly Robinson Peete, who everybody knows, the actress, and Rodney Peete will both be there. And what's interesting is that they have 4 kids, a set of twins, one of whom has autism. So Holly and her daughter have written a children's book that's fictitious about dealing with a brother who has autism called My Brother Charlie. But then Rodney Peete, the famous former NFL quarterback, has written a memoir, Not My Boy, about the same issue, growing up and raising a son with autism. So they'll both be there at 5:30 at the Literary Salon next Sunday.
Wow. And that's neat because everybody in that family has a different experience and they all talk about it. If you've ever seen them talk about it, I think it's inspiring for families going through that.
Really is.
All right, good stuff. Is it free?
It's free. And you can check it out at BaltimoreBookFestival.com.
Okay, and that's next weekend, September 24th through the 26th at Mount Vernon Place, 600 block of North Charles Street. Great, good stuff. Thanks, Greg. Good luck with everything.
Thanks, Lee. Thank you.
Welcome back to 11 News Saturday morning. Ebooks are becoming more popular, so if you're at all on the fence and you're thinking about getting an e-reader, this really might help you make a decision. Greg Wilhelm is here. He's the executive director of the City Lit program, and thank you so much for coming in this morning.
Good morning.
So you brought your Nook with you.
Yeah, I did. This is the future of reading right here. The Nook, the Kindle. Google's working on a device, I understand. So, but check these facts out. E-books account for almost 10% of all book sales now.
And that's quite a bit.
Yeah, that's it rose 165% last year to a $440 million portion of the book business. And so it's here to stay.
And so what that means, though, is more and more authors are going to be having their ebooks. So the ebook selection is only going to grow.
Not only that, but Baltimore's own Laura Lippman, when her book I'd Know You Anywhere came out last August, it was the first book from a major publisher that more ebook copies sold than hardcover copies in its first week.
And now at this point, they're even issuing an ebook bestseller list?
Yes, and 3 weeks ago, the New York Times started listing ebooks with their bestsellers. So it's a force.
It is, and there's so many new books right now to talk about, too, that are out there. And are most of the new books coming out available for download?
Oh, yeah. Most publishers are releasing books simultaneously in paper editions and ebook editions. We were a little concerned at first, but what we've sort of figured out that ebook sales don't really impact negatively paper sales.
So let's talk about some of the bestsellers out there right now.
TikTok is the new James Patterson one, and what's really, so it's as you expect, thrillers are still very popular, both in print paper and in ebooks.
Oh, yeah.
So TikTok is James Patterson's latest book. It brings back his detective, Michael Bennett, who's been in a series of books. What's interesting about TikTok was Patterson serialized it for free up to the publication date of the actual book. So he gave free, like 28 chapters away to free for those who are reading on e-readers. And that's a 21st century twist on what Charles Dickens did in the 19th century.
It's kind of cool, but for readers like me, I love James Patterson, but I'm tired of his same old, same old, same old.
Well,
so maybe this was trying to draw you in. So, I mean, that's
well, now you
good.
can read it on an e-reader instead of a paper.
I know. It's Lisa's favorite author. She's like, I love it. she's getting on me. Don't talk about James Patterson. Okay, how about Lisa Gardner?
Lisa Gardner, her detective is D.D. Warren. So that series, this book has Massachusetts police sniper Bobby Dodge tricked into killing the protagonist's husband. So was it a real hit? Was he tricked? And so the thriller is set there. So thrillers are still big in ebooks as well.
Unbroken. Unbroken
is the best-selling nonfiction ebook, and that's the latest book by Laura Hildebrand, who you might remember from Seabiscuit fame. She wrote Seabiscuit. Unbroken is the story of Louis Zamperini, who was an Olympic runner, a WW2 bombardier, and he crashed in the Pacific, stayed afloat for 47 days, only to be captured by, and rescued really, by the Japanese, but then he was held prisoner to the end of the war. So it's just an amazing story of survival and determination, and writers like Laura Hildenbrand can really bring those kind of stories to life.
It sounds really good. I know one that's very popular right now is Cleopatra.
Cleopatra by Stacy Schiff. This is not Elizabeth Taylor's Cleopatra. This is a portrait of a really shrewd, ambitious, intelligent woman who, had the civilized world in the palm of her hand. And this is, of course, there's the love affair with Julius Caesar and also Mark Antony. But it really is a different take on sort of the Cleopatra myth.
So much so that I'm hearing it really gives you sort of the backstory, and you see a Cleopatra that many of us never knew existed.
Calculating, intelligent, really a power broker between warring factions. So it's just an amazing look. And again, writers like Stacy Schiff can bring that nonfiction story and really make it engaging.
Okay, and real quick, we don't want to miss it. It's Michael Orr's memoir.
Number 3 on the nonfiction bestseller list.
All right, and you don't miss the paper, the book.
Hey,
you don't miss holding
books.
a book.
And I still, after looking at a screen all day and looking at my phone all day, I love the paper book. But I'm really, really pleased with the reading experience with the e-reader.
I'm still on the fence, but thank you so much for your advice. I appreciate it. Nice to meet you.